Good morning and welcome to another edition of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes of Sky High and Fly Jump Camps. This morning, I'm going to be talking with an old teammate of mine from UCLA. I haven't talked to this young man in about 35 years, I think. It's been a few. I graduated off the team at UCLA in '86, and I think Roy may have continued on from there for another year. I didn't ever redshirt, so I had some guys that came in with me that went a year longer. Roy Carls is one of the biggest people I've ever met. Roy was a 6'5", 225 or 30 pounder who ran the 400, and just huge upper body. Just a great guy, super friendly. He joined a frat right away, which I always thought was a death sentence for athletes, but he managed to continue on, and he made it through. Some guys join a frat and flunk out of school. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And he ran the 400, and then I believe he switched over to the decathlon towards the end of his career. But more interestingly, and I want to get at this some today, Roy was an outstanding scholar athlete. He was super smart. We were in the same major, and all I remember was he always got better grades than I did. So he was very serious. Didn't know at the time that he had big plans on that front of becoming a doctor. So he, went to UCLA med school, I believe. Now I have to find out all the details here. I do have another teammate, Mike Johnson, who was a pole vaulter, who did that for sure. We know all that because I used to go walking down the biomed library halls and looking at the graduating classes and all that. And I saw that he graduated both, originally got his degree and then went back to med school. And then however many years later, I remember seeing another graduating class picture with his smiling face right there. And I know now that he's a doctor at UCLA Med, and, has been for some time. So, but Roy is another. He is an orthopedic surgeon who's now living in Maryland. So I can't wait to catch up with this big lug. He is we had a lot of fun, for a couple of years there, training and laughing and joking. And I managed to get a little bit closer to him just because we were in the same major, and had some of the same classes and things like that. But he went on to be a doctor, and I went on to be just a high school teacher. So no, he's just a great guy. So we're going to catch up here in a little minute, and he should be checking in with us anytime. I have not seen him check in yet, so I'll just keep rambling along. We can cut this out later if we need to. We have some other big plans coming up on the docket. I hope to be getting Mike Powell. I keep throwing that out there, and I'm trying to shame him into getting on the podcast, but he is a busy man, been coaching some of his athletes at very high levels, and some of the big competitions have just now come to an end. As many of you track and field fans know, the bigger meets here in the US, and now the Junior Olympics and, the championships at all levels were just competed up in Eugene. That may still be going on this weekend. I'm really terrible at paying attention to exactly when all these ones are. As soon as I get somebody to go to one, I might pay more attention. But I did have one of my 12-year-old, or I think she might be 7 or 8. She, her mom sent me a video of her jumping 3.8 and she was stoked because that was her PR at the Junior Olympics up in Eugene. So everybody's excited, everybody's competing and having a good time. So the theme for today is going to be, what do you do with that education? Is that Roy Carls?
Hey, Troy, what's up, buddy?
How you doing, man? Look at you.
Good. Sorry it took a while. I got a new laptop, and just signing into Zoom was a pain in the butt. Sorry, buddy.
No
Sorry I came
worries.
in late.
No worries. That's all right. I
Yeah.
had a look at that. We went different directions. You went bald and I got long hair.
You're definitely cooler. I mean, I didn't do this by choice, but well, if I did.
Oh man. So,
Yeah.
dude, how have you been? I was counting up the years. I remember I graduated off the team in 86, and then 87, I've told the story before, I was kind of lost for a year. I basically wandered around campus kind of devoid of purpose because I really was there for track. I tell people it
Yeah.
wasn't the
Yeah.
greatest purpose, when other people were smart enough to have a secondary plan. Mine was like, okay, I'm going to go to the Olympics and I'm going to make all this money. And then it was like, no, that didn't happen. So what do you do now? So I did a little send up before you got in here, and I told everybody that when I met you, you were this giant guy that I remember 6'5", were you 6'5", 230, something like that? How
I'm a little shorter now, but yeah,
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 a little
220.
shorter. I remember you throwing around like 335 on bench or something like it was nothing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's huge. I still can't believe they didn't get you to play football.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually wanted to, but Terry Donahue, said that basically you got to do spring ball, and if you're going to play. So,
Uh-huh.
but I would have loved to play. I do miss football a lot, but yeah, hanging out with you guys and running track, what a team! I mean, we had such a great team. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was amazing. I
We,
told
we
everybody
were lucky guys. Yeah,
you were a 400-meter guy, right? And then
yeah.
towards the end, you switched over to the decathlon, right?
Yes, yes. So I
So,
tried to jump with you, but you still jumped a lot higher than me, Troy.
well, I remember too now I keep forgetting everybody's years. Like I was a roommate with Dwayne Washington, the triple jumper,
Yes,
and he and
yeah,
I were that was our
Dwayne.
first year. He used to hang out with Shane Mack all the time. And
Yeah,
Shane Mack, for those of you listening in the podcast, wouldn't know him from track and field, but was a great professional baseball player. I think he played on the U.S. Olympic team, and then he
yeah,
played for the Twins, right? And he won at
yeah,
least 2 world championships with the Twins. So I mean, these guys were amazing athletes, and
yeah,
they were all over the place. Yeah, like you said, that was a real heyday for UCLA sports. But and I
yeah.
can't remember because Dwayne redshirted one year. So did you ever redshirt and then finish up in 87, or did you finish in 86 like I did?
No, I redshirted. Let's see, after my first 2 years, because Russ Hodge, we had talked the whole time. I wanted to do a decathlon, so that after 2 years of the quarter and mile relay, I took that year off to learn events and start doing a lot of training for decathlon. Then I finished up in '87, so I finished up a year after you. So I
Awesome.
took that middle year off. Yeah, it was
See, and that
I guess around
yeah,
'85 I took off.
yeah.
Yeah,
I keep
yeah,
I keep just kicking myself, obviously because the last UCLA national championship team was 1987. And so
right, right.
both myself and Mike Powell, who didn't have a choice, he transferred over from another school and lost a year. But he was also, I know
Pal.
he was a year ahead of me, right? So he was a
Yeah,
senior
yeah,
in 86. I was a senior in 86 because I never redshirted. I was just a walk on, and nobody
right.
really cared about the walk ons. They weren't worried about extending my career. So, I just went right through. So I think in 86, we went and came in eighth at the nationals with all those young sprinters, and I had
Right.
a career year and went, and I remember Brandon Richards went, but we had all kinds of guys. I think Mike Johnson qualified as well, but I don't remember him going, which is weird. I remember he jumped 17,
Yeah.
which was the qualifying standard. But anyway, then you guys got to be on the national championship team, and I did not.
Yeah.
I'm still holding that against everybody.
Troy, we came in at a time when they were kind of rebuilding the UCLA team. And so we were a bunch of young guys. Like you came in with Lee Balkin, I guess, was still jumping, right?
Yeah, Lee and Dell Davis too.
And
Yeah,
oh yeah, Dell Davis. Yeah, Dell was jumping. So there were some good sprinters, but we still had a lot of quarter milers to bring in, which we did the next year or two.
right.
That
Yeah,
actually allowed me, because I wasn't anywhere in their class. These guys were world class they brought in. So that kind of allowed me too, after my sophomore year, to say, hey, okay, it's a good time to do decathlon. We've got a bunch of great quarter milers. We're going to
yeah,
fill the relay teams. And so that was amazing. Around that 85 time, yeah, 84, 85, 86, they just built this unbelievable team. All these
yeah,
Olympians came in.
yeah,
That was crazy to be part of that. I mean,
yeah.
it was unbelievable.
Well, we were blessed to have some really great coaches. When I look back, Art Venegas, one of the best throwing coaches in the world. He had
Ah,
John Brenner, who
right.
was a unbelievably talented athlete from a super talented family. His brother played
Yeah,
football for years with the Saints, and so
yeah.
we had that magic. If you remember that '84 year when all that energy was just coursing through, the shot and the disc,
Oh,
because every week he was throwing
oh,
some unbelievable amount, 68, 69, 70. Then Wins
Yeah.
both Pac-10s and the NC2As in both shot and disc,
Right.
right? Number
Crazy.
one guy in the world
Crazy.
almost the whole year. So that was every week. And it was like, yeah, we want to direct your attention down to shot put ring. And I'm like, yeah, and just keep looking to your left where the high jump pit is, let's let's send some more energy that way, And it was like, but that
Yeah.
was an
Yeah.
awesome, thing to go through. And then, yeah, and then we had Curran, who was and still is one
Oh,
of the best pole vault
Anthony.
coaches in the world,
I
and
love that guy. I
and
love
they
that guy.
just,
We had
they
God, he's
they just cut him
a great
loose a
guy.
couple years ago. I mean, can you believe they let him
Yes.
go after all those years? They weren't even paying him.
Right.
I'll tell this story because they're cheap, and I'm just going to say that out loud. They're cheap, and they wouldn't
Yeah.
pay him, and so
Right.
they would let him run his camps and his clinics there. And he, the guy turns lemons into lemonade. He ends up making plenty of money doing that, and still,
Yeah.
you cut him, he bleeds blue and gold, right? So he's just like,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
did everything he could for him, and then they let him go. And if you look at the record books, he's got everybody on both sides, men and women, were either coached by him or are him. Like he's still in the top 10 in the pole vault, and then all the other guys except for like Tully, I think, were coached by him. So it's crazy.
It's crazy. Do you remember also that he had a pole vault pit in his backyard? So we used to go there and actually work out in his backyard and have a beer afterwards. And he
Yeah.
just what a cool guy. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, he's the epitome
yeah,
of a cool surfer pole vault coach. I mean,
absolutely.
if you look that up in the dictionary, it's got to have his face on it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He is the
Yeah,
coolest guy.
Tully was like a marquee kind of guy too. They were both like
Oh yeah.
Hollywood guys.
He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
he was a different bird too. He was,
Yeah.
some of those stories we can't talk about, but he was he was different to cool to have around because he was, from a class from just before ours. But what else was going on there? We had Art, we had Anthony, and then John Smith came in. And when John Smith came in for the sprinters, that's when the lights came on and I
Yeah,
learned
all the
quickly.
Olympians.
Yeah.
All the
I mean,
Olympians.
Mike Marsh, Danny Everett, Henry, Thomas, who
Right.
unfortunately didn't have as much success as he probably could have or should have, but still a great sprinter.
Yeah.
Kevin Young,
Unbelievable.
we had Kevin
Oh,
Young in that
Young.
group, and I
Oh,
don't know if
yeah.
John recruited him, but boy, he sure did train him because after
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
the world record holder in 400 meters. I had a podcast with him last summer. He's living in Switzerland. And it was just like
Wow.
talking with you, dude. I hadn't talked to him since then. So had been 30 something years, and we just talked for almost 2.5 hours. Crazy. So,
That's wild. That's
so,
wild.
hey, I was when in the send up for you, as I was opening up and doing a little opening monologue. And again, you're listening to Raise the Bar here with Troy Haynes and my long missing teammate Roy Carls. And I was telling everybody, the things that we haven't really covered on the podcast a lot is, the struggle of the college athlete. People don't realize, and especially at a school like UCLA, how competitive it is.
Yeah.
And if anything UCLA is famous for worldwide, most people would recognize and say, well, it's probably UCLA medical, right? I mean, that's what we're probably known the most for. And both you and Mike Johnson, I was telling everybody, both became doctors, right? So did you go to UCLA Med to do your stuff, or did you leave the house?
No, Troy, it's the year after 87. So, I competed in 87, then I graduated. 87 to 88, I stayed in town, and I was actually still training with Russ, thinking I'd, have a future, and he had Olympic aspirations for me. And I had a lot of training to do, a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But I took my AMCATs and got into med school and made the decision. It was just like, I've got to do this. It's what I want to do. I got in, and I decided to join the military. I had no money, and the military also just the adventure of it,
right,
and training of it, and maybe learning to fly one day and all this stuff. So I joined the military. So I went to Bethesda. UCIS, it's called. It's the medical school in the military where it's kind of like the academy. It's kind of like going to a military academy medical school. It's in Bethesda, which is now called Walter Reed. And so I joined the Navy.
Right.
Yeah, I was an ensign in the Navy. It's kind of nice getting paid, while you're going to school.
Yeah, that's different.
Got to wear kind of a snazzy uniform.
Well,
I think the chicks I'm not sure. But yeah, I had a great time. Yeah. So
That's amazing. Yeah.
it was a great adventure. Yeah. So I went to the East Coast. I'm still on the East Coast
Right.
because of that. Yeah.
I remember you were a Point Loma boy in high school, right?
Right. And my family's still there. A lot of my family's still there. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
you telling me that, and I had never been down there, so I can tell you the story just recently, last 2 years, and coming up now, starting my third year at Vanguard University. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're in Southern California, close to Costa Mesa. But one of the
Okay. Yeah.
second or third big beat my first year, we went down to Point Loma, to
Okay.
the Point Loma Nazarene, and it's
Oh, that's
right there on the water.
lovely.
It's gorgeous. I mean, it's one of my favorite places in the world
It's
to
the
go now.
most beautiful field, like baseball field you can
Yeah.
ever, go to. They had I think Division II championships there, baseball. I used to train
Mhm.
on that track. As you go down
Yeah.
the track, it's an unbelievable track. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Look out over the cliffs. You look down
Mhm.
and see the surfers. It's all the breaks
Yeah.
down there. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
So,
only one other that holds a candle to that. And believe it or not, it's Santa Barbara City College. If you've
oh
been there,
man.
Santa Barbara itself,
Yeah.
UCSB is nice, but
Yeah.
Santa Barbara City College, their track looks right out over the water also. So that's
Fantastic.
another one. I was surprised when I found that out because I was coaching at Orange Coast College my first couple of years after I left UCLA, and one of the state meets was there, and we went up
Yeah.
there, walked out onto that track, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is like better than any four-year college, including UCLA that I've
Yeah.
been to."
Yeah. I
So,
know.
uh,
I know. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
so
You got to come visit me down there next time and go back. I go back a few times a year.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. We'll
So,
keep in touch
yeah.
on that one for sure. My
Yeah.
parents live in San Diego, so we go down there all the time. But hey,
Yeah.
I want to talk this about also. So we're talking about the difficulties of the student athlete, and I already told everybody. Like I remember when I bumped into you at some of the first classes. I think we had Bio 5. I remember freshman year together,
Yeah.
huge lecture hall. We had that class, and I had no idea because I came. I went to Millikan High School, and we had decent academics and everything, and I was just smart enough to pass tests. I didn't usually pay a whole lot of attention. I mean, I was like, I did and I didn't, but I would get through stuff. I got a 3.55 in high school. I had one year, my junior year, where I got 4 B's and a C because I was really having fun with track and field and not really paying attention to anything else. And my mom took the car away for the summer and she was furious. And I was like, okay. So I buckled down. I kept my grades up to a decent level, and I was very lucky to get into UCLA. I'm sure some of you listening now would go, "How'd you get into UCLA with 3.55?" It's like, well, I jumped 6.10 3/4 at the state meet, and yeah. So the weird thing about that is every time I checked, you were just kicking my ass on grades. You were so much smarter. I'm like going, man, I'm working really hard here because
I'm not smart.
kind
So
of.
you're a much better risk player. You were a great risk player.
That's right. We
Remember
used
those
to play
risk
Risk.
games at the doors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, we played Risk, and
Yeah.
then I remember introducing to you one of my favorite westerns. You came over one time, and we watched Veracruz on TV with
Oh yeah.
when I said, "You got to watch this with me, man." It's my uncle taught me this when I was like 12. He's like, "This is the greatest western ever." So it had Burt Lancaster and Ernest Borgnine and and all these guys are passed away now, unfortunately. Charles Bronson had just a ton of
All the
people.
coolest guys.
Yeah, all those cool guys from back then. And so yeah,
Yeah.
we did Risk,
Yeah.
but you had the grades. And the other thing that was difficult, and here we're talking about the difficulties for the student athlete. Okay, number one, we weren't getting paid. Now they're starting to get paid. So we missed it by 40 years. They're starting to just gratuitously pay the athletes. And I think it's probably always happened, but now it's almost like they're just saying, okay, let's not even bother to police it anymore. Let's just let everybody
Put it out in the open. Yeah.
just bring it out in the open so nobody gets accused of, doing things illegally. And, unfortunately the rich are going to get richer, but that's the way it's rolling. So we probably still won't see much money for the track athletes until we can change the visibility and get us on TV more or something like that. But we've got that aspect, but then educationally, getting through school. I've told people this story about you so many times. I remember when you were a freshman, you joined SAE, right? So you joined fraternity. Now you and I both know probably, and you probably know more, truckloads of guys that came in, pledged the fraternity, and promptly failed out of school because they'd be
Yeah.
drinking and partying all the time.
Too
And
much.
it's
Yeah.
just
It
like
became
Animal
too much.
House, right? I mean,
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
I thought Animal House was funny in high school, but when I watched it again after college, I was like, oh my God, did they hit this right on the head, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many guys that fail out, but then there was athletes like you that joined. And I remember thinking, how can they do that? Because you told me the crazy stuff they used to do to you, get you up in the middle of the night.
Oh,
And I remember you told me,
midnight, drag you in there, wake
yeah,
you
the
up.
midnight and
Ridiculous.
yelling at you
Yeah.
and all that. And I remember, guys, people out here listening, you got to picture this guy. Roy is one of the biggest
Yeah.
people I've ever met. So he's standing there, this giant of a man, and he's telling me this short little guy is yelling at him and telling him, you're a scumbag, you're this, that, whatever. And he told me a couple times, like, Troy, I just wanted to hit that guy so hard. I wanted to just
Oh.
smash him into the wall. I was like going, it's
Yeah.
a good thing you didn't, because that would not have been a good matchup. So
Yeah.
you had the fraternity. Now, tell me about that a little bit. How did that pan out, long term? Because I always hear great things after that, because people that are in these frats, you've got your
Yeah.
fraternity for life, right?
Yeah, yeah, what a college experience. Well, the first 2 years I was pretty involved in it. And then after that, when I really decided I had to get better, had to bump my grades up, because then I knew about my third year, I knew I wanted to go to med school, somewhere around there, maybe halfway through my second year.
Right.
But I still did the major events, but I knew I couldn't live in the house, because if you live in the house, I don't know how this guy's getting anything accomplished. I mean,
right.
It's just fun city. You just can't. So I had to make some hard decisions. But anyway, but yeah, the first 2 years I was pretty involved. And then I sort of just went over occasionally in the last couple of years, because I had to get serious about grades, because at that point, probably halfway through college, I knew then medicine was for me, because I started out kind of engineering and all the science stuff. I knew that's where because I'm a terrible writer. I mean, I can't write. I mean, I don't even know what a haiku is. Hardly.
Right.
But science is great. So I always loved it. So, but then when I decided, okay, med school, I got to get grades. So my last couple of years, then I would hit the library pretty hard at night after practice. Get my books over. I have to go to the library, because I couldn't study at home either. TV, sports.
Yeah.
And so I had to, you have to cloister yourself away. You have to find time to just say, this is, a couple hours a night, got to do it.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I was the same way. I mean, I think both the fact that we're both males is one thing, because males are definitely one track minded people. Like I always joke with my female clients. I'm like, okay, you guys understand you have an advantage over us, because if I tell you I want you to do 3 things as you're running to this bar, your brain will automatically figure out a way to do all 3. If I tell a guy to do 3 things, he's going to hear the first thing and that's it, because we can't do 3 things at the same time. It's usually one.
That's like patience. That's patience also. When you talk to guy patience, they'll hear maybe 20% of what you tell them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I was the same way as you. If I was in the dorms, I couldn't study in the dorms, because number one, even if you were cloistered in the dorms somewhere in a weird corner somewhere, somebody's going to walk by you. Now, maybe if you're all the way to the end of the wing and you're at the end of the hallway, and maybe somebody comes up the stairs every once in a while.
It's impossible, Troy.
It's impossible, right? Somebody's always.
No, we had so much fun in the dorms. The dorms were just fun, going by we had those midnight pizza. Remember the sub shop down there in Reaver? Like you go down there. And I mean, we had midnight pizza, watch Dave Letterman, all that kind of stuff. And you just can't get anything done. I mean, you can't
get a thing done. So you can't study in your room. So then you tried the middle meeting room, right? In between floors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's impossible, because people are constantly walking back between the 2 wings. So you're like, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, well, whatever. And you waste an hour, and all of a sudden you're like, damn, I didn't get anything done again. So I was like you. The only time I got anything done was I'd pack up all my books and take all my crap and walk down to one of the libraries. Unfortunately, there was of them to choose from at UCLA. So the biomed stacks were good, real quiet. I had more trouble at Powell. Powell was a little bit harder to find space in, but you could find places in stacks, no problem, right?
Right.
Where I would survive, and have that complete, nobody's going to bug you, and you can, and after walking my ass down there, which was a good 30-minute trip, or whatever it was. Yeah. I was more motivated to stick it out, because it was like, okay, I did all this work getting here. I might as well, get something done. So
Yeah. Yeah.
then you said engineering. Did you went engineering and then did you flip? Because I thought you were in Kines like I was.
I was. I wasn't in the School of Engineering. I was what was it? Letters and Sciences, right?
Yeah.
It was
Mm-hmm.
our college. So I started there, but I was taking mostly anything I needed to do to maybe get into the engineering college initially. So I started off letters and science, but I was thinking engineering. My dad's an engineer. That's all the stuff I was ever good at, science, physics, math.
Yeah.
Going that path, even though I wasn't at school. But then I took that great. Troy, did you take that class with us? I don't think you did with us anyway. With me, that the dissection class.
Yeah, I took with Dot Phillips or
Yes.
yes. Yeah, I took that one.
You take it after me or before me? Like, yeah, I don't think
we might have done it at different times. Yeah.
But that class changed me. I said, the body machine is unbelievable. That just changed me.
Yeah.
From then on, I wanted to go medicine.
Yeah,
that was Dot Phillips.
I remember her vividly. I could tell you this story. You'll laugh because I took anatomy in high school. So I was like,
oh, lucky.
And
yeah,
I'm just as cocky and as pompous as anybody else. So I remember thinking, well, I've already taken this. I had this in high school. I'm like, what do I need to pay attention for? I remember, and I loved my anatomy class in high school. It was one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Akers. There was tons of cute girls in there. I had girls that I knew, girls that were older by a year, girls that were, my age. And it was a great class. We learned a lot of stuff, but it was like, again, made the crucial error. This is UCLA. This is not high school. It was like anatomy on steroids. It was like when we got there, in 2 weeks, right? And this is the other thing, those of you out there that don't know about the UC system and the quarter system, after like 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes you're getting hit with a midterm. At other schools I've been in, I got my master's from Cal State Long Beach, and that was a semester school. So things just didn't happen as fast. You had a little bit of time to acclimate, 6-7 weeks. True. And here comes a test. But man, in anatomy, it was like we had the lecture, which was long and detailed. And then we had the lab section, right? The dissection section, which you're talking about. And we would go over there. And Dot Phillips was really, really good at the dissection stuff. But, we went into that one. She was not doing those. Those were the lab assistants, right? So you'd go in there and everything would be already done for you. And it was all labeled and this and that. And I showed up a couple times. Like, dude, I skipped. I was not going. I was going to work out. I was like, I would go and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah. Okay. And so what I forgot was that they were saying, well, look, it wasn't just the names of the muscles and the bones. It was like all the attachments. What did these muscles do? Were they antagonists? Were they synergists? Were they this or that? And I was like going, so as we got close to that first midterm, I'm starting to read the book after 2 weeks. And I'm looking at it going, oh, wow. And so like the next day was the first lab practicum. I got a 50. I got 50 and the class average was 88. And I'm like, oh crap. And then it didn't get any better for a while. I was like, I kept digging holes, and I got to the end. And one day the lab assistant, God bless her, she came up and she handed me this little note, and it said in the nicest little printing on it, and it was handwritten. It said, Mr. Haynes, you currently have 65 or 58% out of whatever, and gave me the numbers. And she said, if you would like to pass this class and not take it again, you need to get like a 95% on the final. And I'm standing there, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, well, and I buckled down and I told this story. I was fortunate enough to take an engineering 10, which I didn't have anything to do with engineering. It was all the kind of logic. It was almost like logic philosophy, but they went through and they taught us about the learning curve. I don't know if you ever saw that one, but the learning curve is like, if you sit down, clear-brained, rested, and you start studying really, really hard, you will learn, right? And your learning curve starts going up. And then your brain is a muscle, just like anything else, and it will start to fatigue and you'll start to level off. And then as you start to level off, you may actually start sinking back down where you start unlearning things. And I was like, wait, what? I go, so you can study too hard and start to drop, right? So they're saying, yeah, as soon as you start to get tired, you need to either take a break, go do 20 push-ups, go eat go get a snack or something.
Yeah, working out is good.
Reset your brain, right? And then come back.
Right.
and get back on. And as soon as you get back on, you start the learning curve up again. So
Right.
for whatever reason, that I think God just sent me that as a lifeboat, because it was like I went, okay, and I did that like every night. I was writing and rewriting my notes. I actually read the text. I was
Right.
going over everything again, and I pulled a 96 on that final and got a C minus. And I could take it again. And I tell this story all the time because number one, it shows you how lazy and unfocused I was. And number two, I said, but I tell this to my kids that do this in high school. I said, look, if you're going to nail the final, you should get an A. You shouldn't be getting a C. I go,
Right.
I did
Right.
better than most people did on that final. And that final was everything. It was like from beginning to end. So I knew it all when
Right.
I left, but I had dug such a big hole that I ended up walking out with a C minus instead of a solid A, which would have looked a lot better. But it was like, for me, I was like, well, I got my points. I got my C minus, right? I've got my GPA, but I didn't even realize what was C minus was less than 2, wasn't it? You had to have a C.
Yeah. C was 2. Yes, it
Was
would
it
have been.
2? C
Yes,
minus? But
C was 2. Yeah.
I started learning about the minuses and pluses because we never had those in high school. They were crucial to us. Man, those
Yeah.
a B minus,
But
I couldn't. What was that?
but Troy, so you're bringing up some important stuff for kids, especially freshmen, because you say I'm sure you had a great time in high school, which you're all about sports, but you still got a 3.5. So you're a smart guy. Like in high school, you can do almost nothing if you can keep up and still get
Yeah.
an A average.
Yep. Yep.
But it does get different, and I think the whole thing though is the time management thing, and no one is, I know, especially if you start off in a hole, because no one tells you how to do it in college or
Yeah.
really, and I know well, that first semester when I joined the frat, and we still had workouts in the fall, and
Oh yeah.
was that 82.
Yep.
I mean, I got my first. I never got C's in my life. Like I got a C, and I can't remember what it was, but I was a little worried about it. And then I kind of said, I got to do something. You got to. Time management is everything, and it's tough, and you got to get away from the noise and the. But in a lot of ways, I mean, kids have it better now, in that they have the internet to check out stuff and to do homework on. But also,
Yeah.
there's more distractions at the same time. So
Sure.
it's probably harder for kids overall now because there's so many distractions that we didn't have
Yeah.
social networking, or we didn't have
Yeah.
social sites or that kind of stuff. So,
I would have
but
to
it
turn off all
is,
the messages. Yeah, for sure on my phone. Like that's
yeah,
one thing I do as
yeah,
a teacher. I usually leave them off anyway, just because I don't want to be interrupted while I'm trying to actually teach something. So if I feel
yeah,
the buzz in my pocket, I can't take it out and look at it because I'm talking to the kids, So it's like, it doesn't even matter. You got to
yeah,
disconnect for a while. But yeah, for a high school student or a college student, and like you said, the distractions are many. For a guy, you got girls everywhere. You've
yeah.
got your frat for you had your sport, so you
Yeah.
had those things going. Now you weren't holding down a job, were you?
No, no.
See, yeah.
Did you work in
I
college?
worked, I didn't work till after the first year. I think my second year, I know I remember working at Haagen-Dazs, and I remember working at
Oh
the
yeah,
food
that's right.
service.
I
I
remember
used to
that.
work at the food service place, down in Reber or Sproul or one of those two.
Yeah.
And those were
Okay.
okay jobs, but you couldn't hold them all the time because you'd have to go home over the summer or do whatever. And when you came back, you couldn't always get them. I remember one year I actually tried to get a job and couldn't, but it was
Right.
difficult for me. When you talk about time management, I had
Oh,
in one
geez.
year gone
Yeah.
from, a sport that you were training for all the time, way harder than we did in high school. And then you had
Right.
your
All the
grades
time.
at a place that was way harder than it was in high school again. And then I had my
Right.
first really serious girlfriend. And then, I remember that year, thankfully, I don't think I had a job that year. So I'm going to say that second year, I still didn't, because when things got into that third year, I remember doing all those things and they all suffered. Like my grades
Right.
were okay. I competed okay, but it wasn't my best. My junior year was just, it was okay. But
You're
my
still over seven
relationships,
feet though. You were 7 feet plus like the whole
yeah, I
time,
jumped
right?
7-1 the very first meet of the year, but I didn't get any better. So that was the weird part. I had a great first meet, and then it went downhill from there. I would consistent 7-footer, but yeah, I was looking to go because I'd gone like 7-2 my sophomore year. So I thought, oh man, I'm
Wow.
I'm ready, and That was
Incredible.
84. So in 84, I was only 2 inches off the trial height. And I was thinking, oh, I can jump 7'4". I just need to work some harder. But that
Yeah.
junior year, man, I just did not, I didn't, you talk about learning it. It was, I think sometimes you just kind of got to go through it. I mean, you get hammered
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
sink or swim. And eventually you figure it out. But it was like, one of the parts was, okay, I can't handle the job. So I let that go. And I can't deal with the girlfriend. And, I talked about that for years with people. I don't know how people could have serious relationships while they're trying to do sports at a high level. Like, I have a lot of appreciation for people that were able to pull that off, because I think
Yeah.
it has to be, unless it's a non-serious relationship or just, you're kind of going through the motions. But if it's a really committed relationship, that's a big part of your
Oh, man.
fitness. It's a big part of your output.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do an Olympic level kind of thing, I don't know if those go
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez, Troy. That brings me back. I'm trying to remember, what was her name? Your girlfriend's name?
Shelly Fry. She
Okay.
was a design major.
I
Yeah.
vaguely remember. Yeah. And I myself, I dated, but I didn't have anyone serious that I was going out with,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
probably really helped too, because I can't even imagine that on top of everything else after
Right.
that.
That's the thing that I learned. I mean, it was like, I just learned, I can't juggle this many balls. I'm not that good at it, and
Yeah.
everything had its pressure to it. So let's talk a little bit about, get back to your sporting. We didn't get through all of that stuff, but you started in the 400 and you went to the decathlon. So how did that pan out? Did you make it, you qualified for Pac-10s, and did you make it to national
Yeah.
and all that?
Yeah, no, I did not make it to NCAA's in '87. I injured. I was having a great decathlon. My last decathlon I did, actually. It was at UCLA. It was at Drake Stadium,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of us were there. Jim Connolly did it. A bunch of us did it, and I got injured actually in the pole vault, and I couldn't throw the javelin after that. I ripped my obliques. Tried to
Oh,
twist too much, and I couldn't breathe.
yeah.
Uh, and it was such a stupid injury, because it was just trying too hard at the top of the pole.
Yeah.
And instead of just letting the pole push you up like you're supposed to do, I was just trying to
Yeah.
push out an extra. I think I was jumping for 14, which I did pretty regularly, and I should have just like easily gone over it. And then I hurt myself and I couldn't continue, and that was really the end of my season officially.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to the NCAA's my last year, which was such a bummer. And that's one reason I came back the year after graduated with Russ, and said I want to do this. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I had this alternate plan. And when I got in, I did well in my MCATs. When I got into med school, I had to make the hardest decision in my life. And I do, as I told Russ, I mean, I regret it a lot, but I also think it was the right decision for my life, because I always wanted to be, I wanted to be a doctor halfway through college. But once I decided I wanted to, I got in, I said, this is good. I'll be paid. I mean, I had to make that decision.
Yeah.
So, but decathlon went really well. I mean, for 2 years, I did really well. My first decathlon, I was over 7,000 points.
Wow.
And then I eked up to around 7,300. And then I just had a bunch of things I had to do to get up in the, high 7,000s.
Yeah.
And I was throwing well. Jumps were okay. Like, was never like a high jumper like you. I jumped 6'6" pretty well, 6'8" in practice, but I never did it in competition.
That's good for the high jump and the decathlon. I know for sure that's pretty high scoring. So
it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
you find a couple 7-footers every once in a while. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, every now and then. But I was mostly just fast. I was really fast, so that helped
Yeah.
a lot. Throws were good. But
you had what are the running events you had? You had the 100, you had the 400, you had the hurdles.
Yeah, and the hurdles, right.
And you were tall, so the hurdles are probably easier for you, because you're like,
hurdles were okay, but just to get that cadence right with your stride.
Yeah.
Like it's talking about Kevin Young. Boy, remember those long strides he had?
Oh my gosh. I remember Kevin Young coming over the high jump pit and doing a front dive over 6'6" with both feet. I'm just like, who can do that?
The guy, his stride was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mine was somewhere in between, and so it was really kind of hard. But I was right there. I did okay, but I was mostly 100, 400, and actually my 1,500 was really good. I usually won or was one of the top of the 1,500, believe it or not. I trained for it, so it's
yeah.
But but yeah, there's just a lot to do. And, I never really got injured before doing decathlon. And when you're changing all the time, all your muscles are
Yeah.
changing events. I mean, like Jim Conley was great. He's really one of my heroes. He still is. He's just a great guy, still a great athlete. I haven't talked to him in years, but he was just a very smooth and do it, work on it.
Yeah.
I was like one of those really big, powerful, uh, big, strong guys. I wasn't the most limber guy in the world,
Right.
but to not get injured in decathlon is really the challenge.
Right.
It's hard, especially when you're wound tight like me. I was wound tight, not super limber. So I was probably going to be a guy that was going to get hurt in some way, even if I tried not to. So that also went through my mind when I got into med school. I'm like, oh man, if I keep training till I'm 30, yeah, I can keep training till I'm 30, 32, but what'll be there for me? So hard decision, Troy. Yeah, hard.
So what was that road like? Because we had heard, when I say we hear rumors, I mean, I'm one of those people that I hear things and then I don't necessarily like vet it out to find out if it's true. But I was pretty sure that the pathway for a lot of people was that it was easier to get into med school and all that stuff if you took the kinesiology and then took, because the competition was a step down, is what I had heard. So there was a lot of people that figured they wanted to be doctors and everything, but I can take kines and I don't have to take quite as much stuff, and then I can take my MCATs, right? And so is that how that all worked out? Because
I don't know. I don't know how to judge that. I mean, I'd say I knew like a lot of little smart guys, bio majors, usually biology.
Yeah.
One cool thing about kines though is just for me, I don't know if it was easier or harder. I have no idea. We all had to have those required courses.
That was a long stretch. That was like 2 years of stuff. I mean, we had to take anatomy, physiology, that 12A and 12B were cardiovascular, all that stuff. That was intense. And then
I love that physiology, exercise physiology.
Those two classes were hard. There was a long list like nutrition, all these other weird classes that ran through different colleges. But then, remember the pre-kinesiology major was more intense than most people's regular majors.
I thought it was great. I think it was so much more interesting than biology. I mean, to me, and to a guy like you, we were athletes. I mean, how does the body work? Exercise physiology. I mean, we're living it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it was the perfect major for guys like us.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so great. And I think at the time, I'm not sure who has it now, but weren't at the time, Troy, I think only 12 colleges in the nation.
Yeah, there weren't that many.
Undergrad. Undergrad really I think was only 12 in the nation, I want to say.
And they don't even have it anymore, which is interesting. They ditched the kinesiology program a while back. Yeah, they have like it's physical science now. Yeah.
Wow.
If you remember Dr. Strand, was it Strand and Vitt, and then great bio lectures. I mean, those guys made blue-green algae the most interesting thing in the world, right? I remember sitting through those lectures going, this is pretty amazing. And I really liked them because they were BS kind of guys. Because I remember one time, because they would take questions in the middle of lecture. So for those of you that out there that haven't been to a big school like that, we're sitting in Moore 100, right, with like 350 people in there. And everybody's listening to these guys because they're really good lecturers. And like I said, they could make things that you wouldn't think interesting. And then this one guy raises his hand and he just sounds like he's on a PhD dissertation question. He just goes, so Dr. Strand, blah, 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 blah. And he runs off this question with, 0.3A and this, that, and the other. And Dr. Strand, he looked at him at the end. He says, if you really want to know the answer to that question, you can come ask me in my thing. But it was kind of like this guy just wanted to show off at how smart he was and asked this question. And he just shut the guy down, but he was cool about it. But he's like, if you really want to know that, I'll tell it to you later, but that, we don't need to cover that here. So it's just like, just put it aside, pal. But it was like, those guys it was fantastic. The biology. And then, the point was that, the program went away. So there were two really high level guys. You remember Dr. Greger? It was Greger and Zernicke. I think it was Greger and Zernicke. They both were two of the most published authors. And, once we start getting into that, like at the time when I was an undergrad, I didn't understand any of that stuff. Like the push to publish, they talk about that all the time. want to
right.
pursue a career in academia, then, you know, when you become a professor somewhere, they want you to be published. They want you
They
to
have to
constantly be
publish.
getting
Yeah,
published articles and stuff
right.
like that. Yeah. So they were
Yeah.
writing these really high level things, and they left. And I think when they left UCLA, that was kind of the death of the kinesiology department.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So I'd
Wow.
have to do some research on that. They might have brought it back, but like I went to get my master's at Cal State Long Beach because they still had a program. They did have a
And you did
kinesiology
masters
program.
you did masters in kinesiology then, Troy? That's
Yeah, I got a
what you
master's in exercise science.
fantastic. Yeah.
That was really fun too because they had a pretty
Fascinating
good
stuff.
staff. I was amazed at the staff they put together there. They had Dr. Oh God, I'm seeing his face right now in front of me. I'm gonna forget it. We had the guy that ran the department was Dr. LaCourse. He was a guy that was talented enough to make statistics interesting. And then we had another
It's
guy.
impossible. That's impossible.
I can't remember his name right now. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But they had another guy that made metabolism and literally like the Krebs cycle and that kind of stuff. He was fascinating. We went through his class, and his first premise was, okay, this is what happens when you run 100 meters. And we started talking about that. And he goes, so, you know, the fastest time in the world right now when I took that class was probably before Usain Bolt. So it was like, you know, whatever Carl had run or something, but it's 9 point, you know, and he goes, how come you can't run 9 point for a whole decathlon, or I mean, a whole marathon?
Quarter mile. Yeah. Yeah. 400
a
meters
quarter mile or anything.
example.
Like things start to change,
yeah,
you know, due to duration. And we went through that, and, you know, with a fine tooth comb, and it was just like, wow, this is really interesting stuff. And then who was the guy that put the force plates under the platforms in 84? I took so many of his classes too at Cal State Long Beach, and this guy was like rocket scientist smart.
Wow.
But anyway, they had a fantastic program there, and that was good to get through. But I still wonder what it would have been like to do that at UCLA. Like I did it way after I graduated in 87 or 88. I actually left after 87 when I didn't make it through the NC2A mix, and I left school for a year to train in 88 for the trials. So I came back once I didn't make it to the trials and graduated in like the fall of 88. So I ended up being on the 6-year plan, the unknown 6-year plan. So you're out there in Maryland now. Are you married? Do you have kids? What's going on out there?
Yeah, married. 2 kids are grown up. My son's actually turning 30 in a week, next week, and or in 2 weeks. And daughter who's married. They're both in Baltimore now. And we're actually, I work in a small town, Cumberland, Maryland, which is actually, it used to be the second biggest city in Maryland after Baltimore during the big heyday, like the early 20th century. Like a transportation mecca, but now it's like kind of just a small town, you know, becoming an artsy town like a lot of these little towns, kind of in the hills in the Appalachians. So I actually live in West Virginia, just over the border, then come into work at Cumberland, which is basically it's a big general hospital, like area general hospital.
Right.
So private practice still. There's not much private practice left, especially in California.
Right.
You know, unless you're a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, not a whole lot of orthopedic, private practices left. But yeah, so it's been a good career, Troy. I had a great time in the military. I tell you, training in the military and starting early life in the military for me during that time anyway, you know, late 80s, early 90s, through the 90s. I got out in 2004. My last job was great in the Navy. I was a team doc at Annapolis at the Naval Academy.
Right.
So that's great. Took care of all the teams, covered a lot of the girls' teams. Like I was out there for the varsity basketball, soccer games. I was kind of an assistant team physician for the football team, the main physician for the kind of the JV football team. So it was great. That was a great experience.
So how did you find out? What was I going to say? I think it's one of those things too, that there's certain things that have happened to me in my life where I go, how did somebody find out that they're actually good at this? Like, have you ever seen those videos where they show those guys
great point.
When they show guys jumping off the side of the mountain wearing those squirrel suits, and they go flying down the mountain, and then they curl up like this, and I'm like, how do you find out you're good at that? Do you just You
You
just
always have
jump
to
off
have
the
the first jump.
you gotta jump off the cliff, right? I'm like, who just
Yeah,
steps up there
you
and go,
don't
you
know.
know what? I'm gonna jump off the cliff wearing this Batman cape and I'm gonna see if it works. I'm like, I'm watching one of those.
That's
This one guy
hilarious.
flew
Yeah,
into a bridge, right? He was flying up
yeah,
and hit the bridge and boom, dead. I'm like, how do you find out? He didn't find out till right then that that wasn't the thing that
yeah,
he was good at. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
that was a
yeah.
crucial mistake.
That last moment to impact, I'm sure wasn't a good thing.
There's a realization like, man, I picked the wrong thing. But like, how
Uh,
did you find out that you were good with a scalpel in your hand? You know, how that's
I don't
amazing.
know. That's a great question. I don't know. There were no doctors in my family. I was always good with my hands. Like I used tools a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't a woodworker or anything, but I always knew. I always made models. You know, I always tell kids like you have all you kids have video games, which is good for hand-eye coordination. We made models.
Yeah.
You know, and then we blew them up, but we made them. We put them together.
Yeah.
Put together planes, you know, all little models and stuff. I don't know. I always felt like my hands were good, but you're right. You don't know. Because we had guys that I trained with that were really smart, great athletes, some, near pro athletes or minors, and they just weren't good surgeons. I knew a couple of those types of guys.
Uh-huh.
But no, you're right. You don't know until you really do it. And you're right. It's a hard, I mean, when you get in medicine, then you pick different well, you train through as a student, especially third and fourth years. You have your clinical years in med school. That's really when you decide if you like something or not, or maybe you have an aptitude for it.
Right.
Then you have to pick an internship. And for me, it was surgery, thinking, okay, I was going that way, most likely orthopedics, of course, but going that way. But until you get in there and actually hold a scalpel and do it, you're right. You're not quite sure. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you practice on, animals when you were a kid or something.
Right. I was gonna
But no,
say, well,
don't know. You
yeah,
don't know. You're right.
you
I don't
blowing up
think.
models. The only difference between you and the other guys is once you blew them up, then you're the guys who put them back together.
That's right. That's
You
right.
gotta
That's
put it all
right.
back together. What
That's
was
right.
it? There's a guy out here. I listen to him on Saturday mornings on ESPN, and they call him Dr. Clapper. Have you heard this guy?
No,
You ever
no,
get a
no.
chance, I'll try to do some legwork for you, but you can look him up. I think it's the way that it's spelled. It's Dr. Clapper, like Clapper. I know he worked with the Lakers. He may
Okay.
still work with the Lakers. He's like this world-renowned guy, and I don't know if it's Cedar Sinai or whatever, but
Oh, gotcha.
his
Yeah.
list of letters after his name is long and distinguished, and
Right. Right.
he has these stories, Roy, where he grew up, his dad was a carpenter. You're talking about all these things, and he gives these analogies of the joints. Like he tells people, this joint is like a saddle joint, and he goes, and it's like this, and he breaks it down where he's talking to a 5-year-old, like he's going, it's shaped like this, and it has this kind of interaction. And I like listening to him because he's really against people that go in and get steroid shots, cortisone and any of that. He's just like, no. He goes,
Yeah.
you're gonna just mess everything up, and sometimes he tells people right there on the show that call in, hey, Dr. Clapper, I've been listening to your show, blah blah blah, and they'll tell him and he'll go, have you done an MRI? Have you done this? Have you done that? And he'll take people from off his show, and he says, you come see me, I'll take care of you, for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just a
Right.
great guy. So yeah,
Right.
he'd be fun to listen to. I thought about you when I saw that. I was like, oh man, this would be a great thing. So I keep that whole idea. Like I think sometimes I've had people say, you would have been good like that in that situation. Like pressure, coming through under pressure. I mean, there's got to be some of
That
that,
does help.
right?
Competing helps with the pressure situation, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
What we went through, you do learn under pressure, and you're getting, when you come out of the locker room, it's like, yeah, you're going on the field. I mean, it's similar,
Mm-hmm.
and you're ready to, we've sports helps you, and all the time I tell my athlete patients and my own kids too. Sports, you learn a lot from it, and a lot of it has to do with dealing well under pressure. I do better now than I did when I competed.
Yeah.
When I competed, I look at myself as really immature. Like I would have been a better athlete, I think, if I mentally was tougher.
Yeah.
Look back, but you grow as you get older, and so I did grow a lot that way in medicine.
Yeah.
Which I think I look back and I remember one time Bob Larson came up and I was really mad at myself because I missed a high jump. I think I was doing a he was watching me in the high jump, and I think I missed like 6'4" or something. I was so mad. It was just a bad day, and I got really mad at myself. He just kind of walked away like, "Okay, Roy, get it together,"
Yeah.
And Bob always kind of had that deadpan,
Yeah.
He was a great coach too. But I think back and that said, God, I was really immature,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm still immature, but not as immature as I was.
What is it they say, that youth is wasted on the young, right? So,
Yes, yes, yes.
you've got all this experience. Like I'll show the kids now, like I haven't told this story much recently, but for years I was a traditional gather, right? Both arms up, reach back and
Yeah,
power up, man, because that was the way I figured it out, in high school. And my coach taught me to gather and jump, and it worked. And I was pretty much like, that's really the only way to do it, and it's like,
yeah.
you start competing against other people and you start seeing people jump really high, and you're like, well, you know what? Not everybody does that. And then in 84, the 84 games, and, I since have met, I've jumped against Dwight Stones, actually coached against him here in Southern California for years. I met and got to both compete and coach against Doug Nordquist. And you start seeing people do things that are really different than the way you did them. And you're like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. And then, in the Olympics, Mogenberg won with a single arm, and he was 6'8",
Yeah,
real skinny, but he would
yeah,
just run off the ground. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I'm like,
yeah.
how can you jump 7'8" doing that? I'm like, that's not fair. And then I'm like, I was like, man, I'm like, that's just not fair. He's not even jumping. Like he looks like he's just flinging his arm up and sailing over the bar. I'm like,
Kind of floating over. Yeah,
yeah, and I'm
yeah,
like, that's just not
yeah.
fair. And the more I've studied it over the years, I've started to figure out why these things work. And as of just recently, I've gone through this thing where I said, you know what? And I would show kids the gather and jump, and a lot of them would struggle with it because, and I've learned this, interestingly enough, and I'm getting ready to write a book on how people learn things because it's really different. But when we learn
Huh.
how to run, you just run, right? You run like this. I go, so this is one of the most natural things in the world, is to get your arms and legs alternating, and you run and
Right,
you accelerate. That's pretty simple, in the big picture of
right.
things. Like when I have to teach my kids how to do something, I'm like, okay, well, let's just run. So get your knees up, kick yourself in the butt with your feet, blah, 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 blah. And then when you get to the takeoff, you go, now here, your arms are going long. And I'm going to have you stop your arms. One of them's going to stop. The other one's going to join. And then you're going to swing them together for 3 steps. And they look at you like, what? And I'm like, that is kind of radical when you think about it. I'm like, double armors are really kind of out of the norm in some ways, because unless you were trained by both volleyball and basketball to use both arms to jump with, if you're first
Right.
jumping, you might be like, what are you talking about? It's like, so I'll demonstrate now. I go, there's like at least 5 to 7 different ways that I've learned over the years of ways to get your arms ready to jump. And in my estimation, if it's gone over 7 something, and I've seen
Yeah.
somebody do it, it's viable. It's like, if you jump 7.5
Right.
doing this style, it is a viable style that will get some decent results. And
Yeah.
I just started getting to a point. I'm like, what is the advantage? Why do these guys have this arm up when they hit here?
Just smooth, and
It's
it's more of a
smooth.
natural because you're going to
Yeah.
running, and then you boom, you just take off
Yeah.
instead of the jump that we all kind of. You're right. Yeah, it's just it flows more. Boom. So you're
Yes.
not gathering. It's part of the flow of running, which does make sense.
It's flow, like you said, and it's a lot easier to teach someone to
Really.
accelerate through to the takeoff when they don't have to change their arms. When you
Right.
have to break your rhythm in the middle and start working your arms together at the same time, which is
Yeah.
totally against almost anything else you've ever going to do. In
Right.
long jump, triple jump,
Yeah.
the triple jumpers do the double arm, but none of the long jumpers do, because they're moving
Right.
too fast. You can't
Right.
change flying down the runway to
Right.
also trying to gather and then long jump. So they just go run
Right.
off the board. And then your
Right.
cycling is going to stay up also, right? So
Right.
that's one thing I noticed with the power jumpers. They tend to lower down. They stop their cycling. You get those guys scraping their feet on the ground, right? It's harder to teach them to cycle through the takeoff. So anyway, that's been a fun recent thing, because I had a kid last year who was a 5'10" kid, and his dad was a 7'2" jumper in college. And I've had a run real recently of really good, talented kids whose dads were high jumpers in high school or college. Like I've had one guy who just signed on this year after this other kid's story I'm going to tell was a 6'6" guy. So anyway, this kid is struggling. He can dunk a basketball. He's tall. He's thin. He's fast. He's doing everything right. But he's one of
That's
those guys. He's throwing his head back before he's even off the ground, right? And it's driving me nuts. I'm like, dude, you got to get off the ground first and just fly for a tenth of a second. That's all I'm asking. And then you can do that head throw back and all that. Well, that wasn't working. So either I want to take credit for it, but his dad might have been the one. And I quickly agreed. He said, what do you think about getting him to run and boom like this? I'm like, let's try it. Cause I think he's stuck in this rut. I can't get him to not throw his head back. We did all kinds of drills. And so we switched him to the single arm just to try it. It's this other phenomenon I'm going to call it. It's like, it's either it sticks or it doesn't. Like if they try it and it works, it's almost like you can almost hit an erase. You can almost just go, forget the double. It's like your brain goes, either your brain goes, wait a minute, we just spent 3 years doing this, or your brain goes, okay, it's out. And then you're starting from square one with this new thing. And his first few workouts looked so easy. He would just run off the ground. And then I said, hey, you can come over here and then reach for your heel. It'd be a nice little layout, and like you said, it just has a flow to it, and he goes, bing, bing. He just kept getting better. All his workouts kept getting better. And we're coming up on CIF. He goes to CIF prelims, and he was only Division 4. So it took like 5.8 to get through prelims. So he couldn't really see anything yet, but it's like in his workouts, I could see stuff coming, I'm like, I think he's going to click. We get to CIF finals. He PRs twice, jumps 6'4", comes in third, and goes to the Masters meet. And I'm just like, this was great. Like turnaround, he went from, we didn't know if he could jump any higher than 6 feet. You knew he could because he had all the hits. He's fast, he's light, he's flexible. You're like, yeah, but that one move was killing him, but when we switched it over to the single, and I'm like, dude, you're tall, you're thin already. And when you get this arm up, before your foot hits the ground, you're already like 6'9". Like your center mass is already up. You only have to use that other side. So that's been a lot of fun recently. So do you do anything with the sports end now that you're the sports doctor? Were your kids athletes? Have you done any coaching?
No. Well, a little coaching. Actually, yeah, when my kids were in high school, I did some track coaching, especially with the throws. Yeah. So I had a couple good discus throwers. I always loved discus. It's just a fun. And so I did some coaching there, and a little bit with other things, a little bit with hurdles, a little bit with other things, but when my kids left high school, didn't really coach after that. I, the team doc for a while, so I was kind of busy doing that with a lot of high school teams. So I don't go down in the field with the teams much anymore. We have some trainers in the area that are really good. But I don't do anything competitive naturally. It's kind of a bummer. I don't know. Do you still compete doing anything? I don't do any competition.
I like to golf.
Sports. I mean, I try to stay in shape.
Are you one of those golfers?
I mean, if I was there, I'd golf with you.
Yeah.
I don't. We have a little farm, so I'm busy around here. I'm mostly a maintenance guy,
Okay.
And do home improvement, little music too. I got into music for a while.
Awesome.
I always loved music. Yeah. But sports, not really. I mean, but coaching was fun though. I did that for about 4 years. My kids' high school here.
Yeah, there's the golf thing is funny because I started. If you remember, Brian Mergenthal and Jim Banich. And
Banich.
Those guys, Banich was one of the most athletic big people I've ever met, right? He was, people didn't realize he ran the hurdles in high school, but he did shot and disc at UCLA, big guy, jovial, funny, going guy. And then, man, him and Mergenthal was scratch. When we play, he was scratch golfer. He was really, really good. And so, I used to hang out with Brian and we'd go out to the Valley and we're hanging out with his dad, Stafford Morgan. He was an actor, great guy, knew his whole family. And we played golf and I fell in love with it almost immediately. So it was right towards the junior, senior, right through there with Brian. And then that 87 year when I was lost, I was starting to play golf. I was just hitting golf balls and I was kind of taking a few classes here and there. I was just like, I didn't know what I was doing. And then I ended up getting a job in 88 when I was in Long Beach training for the trials at 2 different golf courses. So, cause I wanted to hit balls and play for free, so I was just like, and the part of the story that relates to doctors is that the first time I was working on a Wednesday, they'd always told me, they go, the doctors and the lawyers play golf on Wednesday. And
that was the old.
My God! Like this is back in the 80s, right? 90s, but I'm not kidding. It's true. They would come up and it would be like, "Hey, these rich looking white guys come walking in, and they've just got that look to them, and they start coming up and they're like, yeah, give me 4 of these, give me 10 of those. It was like Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah, I'll take 2 of those
Yeah.
naked ADTs.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
take this. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And then
Get a
they
free
whip
bowl of
out
soup for
their,
that hat.
yeah, exactly. And then they pull out their wad, with the clip on
Yeah.
it, and it's got nothing but hundreds. And they're like, "Oh, I got it this week. I got it this week." And they start shelling out hundreds to pay for the round, And I'm like going, doctors, wow, I was like, these guys are just
The
throwing
good
money
old
around, like,
days.
because I was
Yeah.
still a college kid, right? I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that must be
Yeah.
cool to be a doctor or lawyer. You got cash. Oh,
Yeah. That's why I often think of the old Wednesdays golfing day. Wouldn't that be nice in the middle of the week to have a day like that?
right.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
hold my
don't think
call.
it's anywhere like. That's hilarious.
They
Yeah,
did that in
that's awesome.
Caddyshack because that one guy was Dr. Beeper, right? And he gets the
Yes.
he's like, oh, it must be just a routine emergency. And he puts it back in his pocket because he's playing.
Just a routine emergency.
Yeah, no biggie. No biggie. I got a $20,000 putt coming up. I can't
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Oh man. So hey, we gotta figure this out, Roy. We should you said let me know, because now we're in touch on Facebook, but hit me up and let me know when you're gonna come down to visit. And
yeah, I've been telling Johnny Lee too. I want to go see Johnny Lee. I mean, I talked to this guys years ago, but I haven't gotten in touch with him lately.
Yeah.
But Chris Madden, he's probably back in Sacramento. Joey Duarte.
I remember Joey. Yep.
He's down in San Diego, I think. I think he's still down there. I think, what was he doing? I think he's a physical therapist.
Right.
So yeah, it'd be fun to get everyone together. Actually, God, all those guys. Steve
Curho's down here in Orange County. I think still. Not sure.
Yeah, I talked to him a couple times on Facebook. And going to a UCLA game would be a blast. Of course, now they're going to start coming out here playing games when they join the Big Ten.
That's right, because Maryland is in the Big Ten. That's right. That doesn't even make any sense, but
such a trip.
They should like be ACC, right?
Yeah, it's so wild. I mean, it's like I hope I can go to when UCLA comes out to play Penn State in the Big Ten. That would be a blast.
Oh,
but it's so weird. Talk about the Pac-12 just dissolving, and now other teams have been talking about joining.
They're all leaving. Yeah, Colorado left, and I think Washington and Oregon will probably bail because they
are looking to.
They need the income, and the Pac-12 is going to become an afterthought. I mean, it used to be so Pac-12 had some clout, or the Pac-10 when we were in it, but now, like everything else, I mean, it used to be the Big 10 and the Big 8, but now those are both up to 10 and 12 or whatever they are. And then Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC. And so you've got the SEC is just dominating everything. But then, still got ACC, Big 10, Big 12. I would say Pac-10 and now 8 or whatever they got left is just going to almost get kicked to the curb, It
seems like it's dissolving. I know, it's really bizarre.
It's really so bizarre. And the only hope I have is that the money from football, when they go to the Big 10, and start playing those huge games, because I mean, talk about a pickup in intensity. Did you hear the schedule? God. They released the schedule, first year schedule. Yeah, we got to play Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State. You go down the list. There's not a lot of cream puffs in the Big 10. That's a tough place to go through. Even Nebraska and those guys down at the bottom are not that good, but they'll still give you a game. And then you go against Iowa is good. Wisconsin is good. It's like that Stripes movie when he goes, hey, it's like we're in Wisconsin. We were in Russia, right? He goes, it's just like Wisconsin. The other guy goes, hey, I got my ass kicked in Wisconsin once. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But I mean, I hope we don't get our butts kicked in Wisconsin, because we used to own the Big Ten. Like when you and I were going to school, we won 3 Rose Bowls in the first 4 years. Like the Big Ten, those guys are wussies,
We won all those Rose Bowls.
Yeah.
4 out of 5 years, I think.
Crazy.
It was crazy. 80s were great for UCLA. We always lost the first game because it was against, the first game somehow was Oklahoma or Nebraska. We'd lose that game and then win all the other games.
We lose early. But then our freshman year, we played Michigan in Michigan, and we beat them like 35-31 and had to come from behind to do it. And do you remember Tom Ramsey? Tom Ramsey.
I remember Ramsey,
right? He got drafted by the Patriots, right? And then that freshman year when we were done, I had gotten sick. I don't know if you remember that. I got sick at the right about midway through the season, some kind of virus or something, and I dropped like 10 or 15 pounds, and it took me a while to recover. And it just,
Yeah,
my freshman year was a washout anyway.
that's
That's the
right. That's
year
right.
that I wish they would have redshirted me, but they didn't care about me because I was a walk-on. So I didn't redshirt, and that year was a waste. And then I stayed up at school because I had to make
Yeah.
up units. I had to drop a couple classes. I was that sick. So I kept one
Jeez.
class, and I was now like 8 units short. So I ended up staying over the summer and taking 2 4-unit classes. Well, I went down to the weight room. That was the other thing I decided, since my freshman year was such a bust. I didn't jump as high as I had in high school. And I had put all this pressure on myself because no, they didn't even
Yeah.
care. I remember when I showed up, I was like number 7 on the depth chart. There was like a
Yeah.
bunch of guys that had jumped 6'10. So they didn't care whether I panned out or not. But I was like, I had that pressure. I knew I wanted to be good, and, had my goals and everything. So I'm like, I got to get stronger. And I got in the
Right.
weight
Right. Right.
room. And when I went down to the weight room in the summer, number one, it was cool because there's hardly anybody in there. And number
Right.
two,
Right.
one of the people that was in there was Tom Ramsey, who was training to go
Yeah.
down
Huh.
east, to be with the Patriots. So I actually
Right. Right.
I talked with him a lot. Really nice guy. He's one of those
Huh.
people that I always tell, those stories about when you talk about athletes, people that
Yeah.
you met at UCLA, blah, blah, blah. I got to tell you this story, and this would interest you too. I was at a golf fundraiser a couple years back. They're just starting to bring that back after COVID, but this is like probably 8 years ago. And Rayford Johnson was there. Like I said, he always bled blue and gold.
Yeah.
You're in any blue and gold event,
Yeah.
they had
The
Rayford
classic
there. He was
guy.
great, classy
Uh,
guy. And then,
classic.
do
Yeah.
you remember our first year, our second year? Probably was the second year. I don't even remember going to an awards banquet as a freshman, but that sophomore year, I remember going
Yeah.
to the awards banquet. You remember who came and gave the opening speech? Was Rayford, and he was in a
Oh, man.
tuxedo. He looked so sharp, and he just comes up, and
Uh,
I'm like, and we had just gone through, I think we'd already done the Olympics. God, my brain, I can't remember exactly the sequence, because if it was the awards banquet, could it have been before? Maybe I knew who he was in the Olympics because he came and did our address. But anyway, it was like, that was Rayford Johnson. And then he ended up bringing the torch in '84, right, to the Olympic Games.
yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
you start doing stuff like that when you're at UCLA, and you're like, man, we are pretty cool. We got some pretty high level
Yeah.
athletes. This guy's been on TV.
Absolutely.
He brought the torch in the
Yeah.
Olympics. It was class
Yeah.
all the way around. So he was there at this golf tournament, and then I hit a wicked 6-iron to like 3 feet on this 170-yard par 3, and I come walking up there thinking I'm going to win the closest to the pin, and this guy comes lumbering out onto the green there was a snack shack right by there, and he must have seen the shot or something. I don't know if he was just the greeter, but he comes walking out, and when I say just the greeter, you're going to realize that he's not. He's huge black guy, reaches out his paw and shakes my hand, and he goes, "Hey, I'm Jerry Robinson," and I'm like,
Jeez.
"Jerry Robinson?" I'm like,
Correct.
"You're a stud. You're awesome." And he's just like, but this big hulking guy, and he wasn't like a giant lineman because he was a linebacker, but he was, a big guy. And man, when I say lumbered, he looked like he was in pain, like they get when they're in their 50s,
Knees,
60s,
yeah.
playing football all those years,
Knees and
but
hips. Yeah, absolutely.
we stayed after the round and had a couple beers, and he just talked about, playing in the Rose Bowl against Archie Griffin, and playing, in the NFL, with the Raiders and Al Davis and all that. Just, oh, what a great guy. I just remember what a cool guy to come out here. And, I'm sure they just, asked him to come out and, hang around, hobnob with the people and everything. It was really cool. So
that was a crazy place to be, Troy. We had so many people around all the time, like famous people come down and watch us, in meets all the time. And,
yeah. Well,
it was amazing.
You remember the Olympic year in '84? There was all kinds of athletes training on the track.
All those guys. Remember, it was Thierry Vignon, the pole vaulter.
Yeah,
they'd smoke between jumps.
Right. Very
Love
European.
the French guys. Maybe hold the cigarette like this.
Yeah.
Put it out, grab their poles.
Yeah. And then
all kinds of guys.
Kerho was dating that little sprinter from Canada, right? The black gal. You remember her? I can't remember her name. I remember meeting her. And then you remember the guy that tore his hamstring in the Olympics and went hopping across the line with his dad? That famous video. There's a guy, and it was either 88 or 92, but he was I think he was a 400 guy. and he tore his hamstring on the final turn and just hit the
Wow.
deck really hard. And then
Huh.
he got up and started walking, and everybody's like, stay down, stay down. He's like, no. And then his dad ran out of the stands,
Yeah.
put his arms around him, and they walked across the finish line. I
Jeez.
always tell
Jeez.
everybody, I'm like, I still tear up. I'm like, dude,
Wow.
you got to
Wow.
realize, I tell people, I go, why? I go, well, you trained so hard. You
Oh
trained so
yeah.
hard and you made it. You made it to the
Yeah. All
Olympic
those
finals,
years.
dude.
Yeah.
You made it to the
Yeah.
Olympic finals. You're going to
Yeah.
finish that flipping race. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
finishing this race. I
Yeah.
might have a
Yeah.
broken leg. I'm going to hop on one leg,
Yeah.
man. I
Oh
don't care
my
if my
God.
time is 2 minutes. I'm finishing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that story, but I tell that one all the time. I mean, people don't know, I don't think as much. When we were kids, I remember watching Bruce Jenner, win the gold
Yeah.
medal
Jeez.
and be on the Wheaties box and everything. And I was just like, oh man, I want to be that guy. He's good looking, he's
Yeah.
muscular,
Yeah.
he's got those gold medals around his neck.
Great competitor. Great
Yeah.
competitor. He's just
72, when I was 8 years old, first Olympics I watched was in Munich, and Mark Spitz wins 7 gold medals, and they
oh
did
yeah.
that Sports Illustrated shot where he's wearing all of them.
Yes.
And he's
I had
cut,
that.
fit,
Yeah.
standing there on the cover. And I remember going, oh
Yeah.
man, that is so
Yeah.
cool. He's got 7 gold medals, and
Yeah.
now you
Yeah.
can't even hold a candle to what Phelps did. But it was, at the time, he was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
flavor of the month for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, that time period. I mean, Reggie Miller was there playing basketball when we were there.
Oh, that was great.
I used to bump into Reggie in the weight room every once in a while. I remember the volleyball players, Doug Partee, Ricky
Oh my
Lewis,
God.
all those guys. They were in the weight room all the time doing the same stuff that we did, the hang
Yeah.
cleans and all that stuff. We were always
Yeah.
trying. I could touch as high as Doug Partee could on that Vertec.
Did you really? Yeah, that
Yeah.
vertical thing and
And he
that
was
we
six
had there.
six. He was like you. He's
Yeah.
6'6" with a longer reach. So I was like, I can
Yeah.
out jump you. You know that. But I always told that story too, because I could also beat Del Davis and Lee Vulcan at all of those things, but they
That's
jumped
incredible.
way higher than I did, because I tell my kids this all the time. I go, it's easy to jump straight up when you're running in a straight line. But I go, when you throw that curve in there and you start leaning, I go, that's a whole another dynamic. You really have to learn how to run curves and how to jump out of them, because that's that extra slingshot of physics, right? I go,
Right.
it almost has nothing to do with your jumping ability, because if I want to just see you run and jump over something, I'll just have you run a straight line, because basketball players do that all the time. They can run up, jump off one leg and touch the top of the backboard. They're not running in a curve. They're just running straight.
Yeah.
It's just amazing stuff. Well,
It's
hey,
great
Roy,
you're teaching that. I mean, teaching that kind of physics to athletes is hard. It's hard enough to do it yourself, but to teach it.
Yeah, that's the harder part now too, because I demonstrate at very low heights. I do not.
Yeah.
I can't get off the ground anymore, man. It's like I can do the simple stuff, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm teaching the single, because it's helping me cheat. It's like I get the arm up there, and I'm like, I can get a little bit of air doing that, but I don't. I run up and gather and jump, and I feel like about a half a second of hang time. So it's like, this ain't working, guys. Just remember, don't put on weight as you get older. Strength to weight ratio.
You look great, man. You look in great shape. It's great.
Oh, thanks. I think it's genetics. I pretty much do the seafood diet and sit around, drink beer after workouts. So
yeah. Marriage is good, Troy.
Yeah. Marriage is
You
good.
got married a couple years ago, right?
A couple years back.
Like
Yep. We're living out in Santa Monica.
We're
she's a former Bruin. She went to UCLA, was also kinesiology, and then she changed because her math background was so good, and she wasn't really doing much with the kinesiology thing. She went and got a master's degree in business at Cornell. So she's been out by you on the East Coast. And her sister lives in DC, so close by you guys. So if we don't get you over here in San Diego, maybe we can come out there.
Yeah, buddy. Well, Troy, it's so great talking to you, man. What a trip. It's great talking to you.
It's been a long time. Hey, well, let's I'm gonna let you go, because we're getting late in the day here, starting to get ready to do some stuff. And
good deal.
This is awesome, Roy, and we will definitely figure it out. Let me know when you're coming to San Diego, because it literally is not a very long trip from here, and I'm down in San Diego, like I said, visiting my mom all the time, so we can make that work.
Good deal.
Try the man. All right, Roy. Awesome talking to you, man. Thanks for making the time. Appreciate
All
it.
right, buddy. All right, man. It's great talking to you, my man.
All right, Roy. Thanks, man.
All right. Have a great one, Troy. You
Okay, you
made my
too.
weekend, buddy.
All right.
See you, man.
See ya. And that's going to wrap it up for us here on another episode of Raise the Bar. Thanks for joining us today. I had as my guest a teammate of mine at UCLA, Roy Carls. He was a 400-meter runner when I met him, and then moved into being a decathlete. One of the biggest, strongest people I've ever met, and a great guy, quick to laugh, really easygoing, and just stellar. And he ended up going in, as you heard, becoming an orthopedic surgeon, joined the Navy, has done some pretty amazing things. So we definitely, we talked about the difficulties for student athletes, and then, having a career after, track and field after college. So thanks again to Roy for taking time out of his schedule for me on the weekend. And it's been over 30 years, and maybe we can get together down in San Diego when he comes to visit. Looking forward to that. And until next time, again, we're looking for some more guests. So if you heard the podcast and you'd like to be on, send me a message on at Sky and High Fly Jump Camps on Instagram, and just let me know. All right. Until next time, it's Troy Haynes signing off.